Hi my sewing friends, welcome back to Sewing with Sin. Today I'm going to be working on 100 Acts of Sewing shirt number 1, and I've already sewn the shirt. If you need the tutorial for that, you can find it under the hashtag Sewing with Sin. Today on the shirt number 1, I'm just going to be working on the neckline. So I'm going to take you through the process of finishing the neckline. So right now I haven't cut it, and I haven't added anything to close these necklines. So that's what we're gonna be working on today. I'm gonna just show you some tools that you'll need when you're making your bias tape face. Bias tape facing, that's what that's called. So I have a roll it's just something that I pre-bought on Etsy, which I will link down below where I got this from. It's a really soft cotton, and I'm going to use this to make my own bias tape. And I'm also using this little guy. It came in a pack with a couple different sizes. I am not sure what this is called. Maybe bias tape facing, bias tape maker. I'm not sure what it's called. I'll try to find that information and then also link that below in case you make your own. This is size 16 millimeter, and that's what I use whenever I'm making my facing. If you don't have something like this, you might have, let me show you another option, 1 second. If I can find it, okay, here we go. You might have bias tape that you can buy in a package that looks something like this. And the bias tape might look something like this. This is a really wide one that I used for another project. So if you're a little intimidated and you don't have the materials maybe to make your own, you can go ahead and buy something like this from a craft store, maybe Joann's. What I don't really like about this is the fabric itself. It's like a polyester maybe, I'm not sure. It's not very soft, and so when you're wearing it, sometimes for me at least, this material like itches me right here. So I found this amazing, really soft roll. It's like a stretchy cotton knit maybe. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you the first thing that you need to do to your shirt before you start adding any of this. All right, so you're going to find the front of your shirt, and the way that you know the front of the shirt, if you went through the tutorial with me, your seams are facing the back of the shirt. So if I look on the inside of my shirt, my seams are facing the back this side. So that's how you decide where the front and the back is at. It's actually not really a big deal. Your seams could be facing the front. It's just a habit to make. Like the seams, when I iron them, I always iron them towards the back. So that's how I know where the front of my shirt is. Okay, and in her book right here, she tells you to kind of try on your shirt, which you should do. I'm not really trying it on, I'm just putting it against my body. And then you're gonna mark about wherever you want your neckline to be. So you might use a tailor's chalk, or you might have a pencil. This is not a fabric pencil, but if you have a fabric pencil, use that and mark wherever you want yours to be. So I already did that. I put a little mark right here. That's where I want my neckline to be. Then you're going to fold the shirt along the shoulder seams. So I'm matching, these are my 2 shoulder seams. Here's the sleeve right here, and here's the sleeve on this side. And I'm folding it, so this is the whole neckline right here. Let me show you that one more time. So here's what it looked like open. And I'm just folding it across the opposite direction along the seams. And then I'm gonna place it down on my table. And let me bring you down so you can see what I'm doing. And then what you're gonna do is find wherever you made your mark. So here's where I made my mark. I don't know if you could see it, it's right about here. I don't like my neckline to be too low. I just prefer it a little bit higher. And then you're gonna cut. You might even draw it. If this is your first time doing it, you might wanna draw where you want the cut to be. If you want a really big scoop, you'll scoop in further. If you want just like a slight Neckline, you're going to cut it a little bit smaller. So I want to show you what I mean with this shirt, for example. So if I were to fold this shirt along the shoulder seams, this is what it looks like finished, by the way. This is what we're going to be working on today. But I can kind of like guide it with something like this. If you have another shirt with a neckline you really like, you can fold it in half this way and just sort of like use it as a marker for how much you're going to cut. Now, make sure that when you're done cutting, I'm going to show you with mine right now, you stop right at that shoulder seam, right before the shoulder seam. You don't want to cut into the back of the shirt because the back of the shirt obviously should be a lot higher. So I'm going to start at that point where I marked, and I'm just kind of, I'm honestly just winging it here. And you could see mine has like, when it comes out, it has like a scoop. It's a little bit thinner on this side. So that's about how much I took off. And then hold it up to your body or go try it on again just to make sure that you like that neckline. You might want to start cutting off less at a time. So cut a little bit, try it on. If you want it to be a little bit lower, cut a little bit more. Do a little bit at a time if this is the first time you're making this shirt. That way, if you were to cut a big portion out the first time and it's way lower than you expected, you wouldn't be able to fix a problem like that. So here's my neckline now. I'm just gonna kind of put it against my body. And it's pretty high. I might even compare it to my other top that I made. That's something that you probably cannot do if you don't have a comparison shirt, but I like all of them to be pretty similar. So it looks pretty close. And even if it's not, that's okay. And if the back of your shirt feels too high, you could trim that down slightly too, if you wanted to. I'm not going to, I'm just gonna trim down the front of the neckline. Okay, that's the first thing that you need to do. Next step, you're going to grab this, your bias tape and your bias tape maker, and you're gonna head over to your iron. I'll meet you there. Okay, as you head over to your iron, turn it on, start heating it up while you're getting this next step ready. The next step is you're gonna take your bias tape and you're going to just kind of measure in general how much you need. So here's how I'm measuring it. I'm just going around the whole neckline with that bias tape, and I'm just gonna give myself a little bit extra too, just in case I need it. So this is about the size of my neckline, but I'm gonna cut a little bit more than that just to be safe. And when you cut that end, cut it at a diagonal. And I'll show you why right now. Then move your shirt out of the way, you don't need it right now. And the reason why I cut it at a diagonal is because I'm gonna try and push this through this little guy right here. The little bias tape maker thingy. So I'm just gently guiding it through there because it's gonna come out through this little hole right here, and what it's gonna do is it's gonna fold it the way you needed it to be folded. So this always takes me a little while, this step. So I'm gonna come back as soon as I get it through. Don't shove it through. I'm trying to shove it and being impatient. Also, I have a fabric that slightly curls. Oh, I'm not using, that's probably why it's not the diagonal end. The diagonal end was on this side. I was putting the wrong one. So just gently guide it through. Let's see if I can get it this time. There we go. I think it's starting to go. There we go. Do you see how it's poking out? And as it pokes out, what you're going to notice is this awesome tool right here folds it for you. So here's what it'll look like as it starts to come out. both of these folds should be the same. They should be even. See what that looks like as it starts to come out? So then what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this over to the iron and you're gonna press it as it comes out. Let me see if I could zoom in. Can I zoom in for you? I don't know why I cannot zoom in. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking out a little bit at a time, and I might even pull this a little bit closer. And I don't have this on super hot because number one, I don't want to burn my finger. My finger's right here. And number two, it's a really thin piece of fabric, so you don't want to burn it. Okay, then I'm just going to show you what that looks like really quick. Then bring it back and pull this little guy. That's why it has the little pull right here too. You could pull it back a little bit at a time and press it down as you're pulling it out. So a little bit at a time, press it down, pull it out. I'm pressing with the iron and then I'm pulling this little guy out. And you're gonna keep doing that. Oh, I did a little bit too much at a time. It's like a two-handed job. It's really hard to do with just one hand. So keep doing that all the way along the entire piece of bias tape, and I'll meet you back after I'm done. All right, here's what it should look like when you're finished. Then what I've started over here is what I want to show you. The first step is you're going to take the bias tape and open up one side and take the flush side of the bias tape to the flush side of the fabric. So I'm matching raw edge with raw edge, and I'm gonna pin it every so often so it looks just like that. You want to use pins really liberally. I'm using it almost every inch or so because you just want it to hold really nicely in place. So here's what it looks like so far. And then I'm going to show you a few more. And then I'm just going to speed this up a little bit until we get all the way around the entire shirt. So I'm still matching raw edge to raw edge. Try not to pull anything. Here's what it looks like along the way. Make sure that your shirt is right side facing out. I should have said that before, but you could probably see my right side right now. I'm working on the right side of my shirt, not on the inside. Okay, keep going all the way around until you get back to the point where you started over here, and I'll show you what to do in this area. Here's what it should look like all the way around, pinned all the way. Now I'm back to this point where I started at. And here's what I'm going to do to combine the two pieces together. First, I'm going to take this point where I started and I'm going to fold. Do you see how there's a raw edge right there? You don't want that raw edge to be showing because eventually it could fray. So I'm going to fold that little raw edge over slightly. I actually just folded it right over the pin. And then I'm going to take this extra piece and place it on top of that. Oh, here we go. Here's what it looks like when I put it on top. So I'm going to pin right here first. And if you need to see this again, just go back and watch it again. Okay, and oops, it came unfolded. So I'm going to fold it over, place this new piece on top, and then I'm going to take out this pin and put it on top of all of those layers. Okay, so you have the folded piece underneath and the new bias tape on top, and you pinned through all of those layers. Then trim off all this excess. You don't need it. So I'm going to trim just slightly over. And there's what that end looks like. Now we're going to take it over to the sewing machine. I just wanted to show you a little bit closer what that raw edge looked like. Here's what it looks like underneath. I'm going to take it off just so you could see it. This part is folded over, and then this piece is going to go right on top, and I'm going to pin that in place. Oops. I want to make sure that everything is as nicely lined up as it can be against that raw edge. Pin all 3 of those layers through, and then you're gonna make sure that you're on a straight stitch, and you're gonna straight stitch all the way through where this iron mark is. Do you see that little fold right there? That line where you folded, it's gonna help you know where to be sewing your straight stitch. So I'm gonna place it in really gently, remove that so you have room to place it in there. Doesn't really matter where you start at. I try to start next to, really close to a shoulder seam if I can. And I'm gonna get in here a little bit closer so you can see. So I'm gonna line up this open slot where my needle is gonna go through to where this crease is at. So the needle should be right along that crease. You're gonna forward stitch a few stitches, back stitch, and then along the way, you're gonna go pretty slow. I do this slow every time, and remove your needles the entire time. And oops, here we go, remove one of the needles. And keep sewing along that line. Sorry, my dogs are barking. All right, sorry about that. Someone decided to stop by unannounced and the dog started barking. I'm gonna keep on sewing along that fold right there. And the edge of your shirt, the raw edge, should be pretty much lined up with the edge of your foot, your presser foot. And you're just gonna keep going all the way around until you get to that point, that tricky point where there's a couple of layers. I'm gonna meet you back at that spot. All right, now I'm getting close to that spot where there's a couple of layers right here where you started and stopped. I'm just gonna go a little bit slower, and I'm making sure to slightly pull down here. That way nothing bunches up right here. And everything lays nice and flat. So I'm checking the seam right here to make sure the seam is flat before I iron over it. Remove that needle. It's safe to remove it now. And then I'm almost done. Here's the point where I started. I sewed a little bit over that point, and then I'm going to back stitch. Lift that presser needle, presser foot, and the needle, and then trim whatever excess needles thread. Ooh, I'm tired today. Trim that excess thread, and then here's what it should look like when it's finished. Here's what it looks like on the inside of the shirt. Here's what it looks like on the outside of the shirt. Okay, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna start heating up our iron again, because what's gonna happen next is this entire piece is going to fold into the inside of the shirt, and it will eventually look like this. You're gonna iron along that edge. So now the outside of your shirt will have a nice, clean neckline. So it will look like this when you're finished. And when we start sewing that inside, you're gonna pick your thread that you wanna show on the outside. So I'm doing like an off-white on this one. If you wanted like a contrasting color, Just choose your color for this step because you're going to be able to see it on the outside of your shirt. So let's go over to the iron. So I still have my shirt with the outside, the right side facing out. And I'm going to just take a little bit at a time and I'm going to fold it in. And I'm going to make sure that the entire bias tape is on the inside of the shirt now, not on the outside anymore. And then I'm just going to take my iron and press down that piece that I just folded over. Press that whole bias tape and the edge of the shirt down. Here's what it looks like. And on the inside, here's what it looks like. And then I'm gonna get a needle and pin that down. Pin it down in a couple of different places. That way it just stays nicely in place before you take it over to the sewing machine. Then just move your shirt over. Now I'm working on the shoulder seam of the shirt and I'm folding it over a little bit at a time because it's a curve. You don't want to do a big old chunk at a time. And I'm doing just one little part, ironing it down and then pinning it down. And for the shoulder seams, I'm actually pushing this down on the shoulder seams because I want it to lay nice and flat. So I think personally that's the trick to a nice flat seam, is just before you even sew it, you're ironing it down nice and flat. Okay, so here's what my shoulder seam looks like. And here's what the shoulder seam looks like on the inside. And then I'm just gonna keep going all the way around the entire shirt. Finish up folding it, ironing it, and pinning it in place. All right, how did that go? To me, that might have been the trickiest step, possibly. I don't know, I wonder if that was a hard step for you. I wanna show you that one little spot where we have multiple layers and it's folded over. Here's what it should look like. Sorry, it's a little blurry. And I put a pin right in that spot. Now you're gonna fold the shirt, take out the shirt. Now the outside, the wrong side is facing out and the right side is facing in. And do that really carefully so nothing comes undone. And friends, you are already on the last step. Before you do this last step, this should be what the front looks like. This should be what the back looks like. There are these cute little tags that you can buy on Etsy, probably a lot of different places, but you can get a little tag. I ran out of mine, I wish I could show you. And you would slip it in right here and maybe a tag might say fuck sizes, or this tag might say made by me. They're really cute. And you would, if you have a tag, this is the time to place it in here in that bias tape and then pin it down right here. So it would be sticking out towards the back of the shirt. Now let's sew up this last part. Take it over to the sewing machine. Again, I'm gonna try starting pretty close to a shoulder seam. So here's one of my shoulder seams. I'm gonna slip it in there and take out one of the pins if it's really close to the shoulder seam. I think I could leave that one in. I might start over here a little bit. And the presser foot this time is not on the edge over here. You want that hole right there, and where the needle is going to come down, you want it to line up as close to the edge of that bias tape as you can. If it's not right on the edge, that's okay too. Not a big deal. So I'm pretty close to the edge. I'm going to forward stitch and then back stitch a little bit. Take out that first pin that's going to be in the way in a second. And I want to show you with my left. So here's my left hand over here. My right hand goes underneath And the reason why it's underneath is because this finger and this finger are kind of filling to make sure that everything is flat underneath here. And this hand is going to be the hand that guides. So this hand is filling for any bumps underneath, making sure that the shirt is nice and flat. You could see like over here, it could start to bunch up and you might accidentally fold it like that. And then you'd have like on the opposite side, here's what it would look like. It would be a big fold right there. So I'm going to do a little bit at a time so you can see what that process looks like. So my left hand is guiding it forward, not pushing it though. And then my right hand is feeling for any bumps along the way. I don't know why that thread keeps coming back. Okay, and then just kind of shift the shirt around as I'm doing a little at a time, and then I'm shifting the shirt. Remove your needles. Wow, we got a noisy neighborhood today. Okay, this part right here, I think I'm at like the front of the shirt. And it's not as tricky as like the shoulder seams are a little bit trickier. So let me show you what it looks like so far. You see how close I am to that edge? Careful that you don't get so close to the edge that you come off the edge and maybe you're sewing down here. Here's what it looks like on the opposite side of the shirt. And now I'm going to keep going all the way around and I'll meet you back at the point that we started at. Okay, here's that point where there's like that extra layer of fold. So I'm going to sew really close to that and then remove the needle, and I'm holding that in place so nothing falls out. And you could see right here, mine is popping out slightly. I'm gonna try, actually, if your needle is down, you can bring the needle foot up and make a little adjustment before you sew it. So I'm just trying to make sure that everything is flush over here. You can't see because my big finger is in the way. That's as good as it's gonna get for me. And then press it down, bring the presser down. And make sure you shift that shirt around as you're going around the shoulder seam. Like to go back and look at that spot. There was where that extra layer is at. It's popping out slightly. This fabric shifts a little bit. I'm okay with that. I'm just gonna iron that down, press it real good. Here's what it looks like on the opposite side. It looks pretty good. I don't see any pinching, no folds or anything on that side. So that's the most important part, is the outside of the shirt too. I'm almost back to the point where I started, I think. Let me see. Here we go, so close. So I'm just gonna pan out so you could see a little bit better. Okay, and then I'm gonna, down here, I'm gonna sew over it slightly and then back stitch. Back stitch. And then, let's take a little look-see-loo. Take off any of that extra thread. I still can't get over the fact that I just said ironing machine again. I don't know why I keep... Anyway. Okay, so you're going to take the edge of your iron and push it down really hard on all of that thread that you just put in. Move it over to the shoulder seam and just do one shoulder. Don't try to do two at a time. And push it down, put a lot of pressure on it. You want everything to be as flat as possible. Nobody wants a weird bumpy neckline. And my last shoulder seam. And then turn it right side out and go try it on. That is it. You are done. That took me, well, I'm also making a video, so it took me a little bit longer, but finishing a neckline should not take more than a half an hour. Of course, if you're doing it for the first time, it might take you like a full hour if you're taking your time doing it. Here's what the inside looks like. So beautiful. Doesn't it look so beautiful? And then I'm going to turn it right side out. And where's the front of my shirt? Here's the front of my shirt. Isn't she lovely? Isn't she wonderful? Looks good, looking good, looking good. Now, if something, when you put it on, something doesn't feel right, you might want to just do another iron, press it. I might do that right now before I even put it on. Iron it one more time over the top right here. How was that? I wonder if that was helpful for you. I remember the first shirt I ever made, it was with one of my colleagues who was teaching me how to sew. And I was so intimidated by doing the neckline that I just had her do it and I watched her. So I don't know why it seems like such a intimidating step, but it's really not too tricky. Of course, with anything, you get better with practice, right? So if something felt confusing for you, or you can use a little bit more explaining, or you have a question, leave that in the comments below. Or you can also find me on Instagram and you can just send me a DM or a comment. And my Instagram handle is I am sewing sin. And if you've watched this and I don't know, maybe you're like an expert sewer and you have a lot of experience, because I've only been sewing for 2 years. If you're watching this and you're like, I know an even better way to do it, let me know too. I would love to try a different way if there's another way too. So thank you again for joining me. I'm trying to think really quickly about what my next project is, but honestly, I'm not sure because I'm going to be taking a little vacation. I am almost on summer break. I'm a teacher, so we get break pretty soon. So I'm not sure when I'll be back again, but thank you anyway for joining me, and I will see you soon, hopefully.